Bosses of Reddit, what the worst interview you've seen? When my dad was going through applications, in the reason for leaving last job part, a man wrote that he had shot his previous boss in the head. His PO had told him to be honest. Interviewer, so, what qualities can you bring to the team? Applicant, I don't know. Interviewer, well, what do you consider yourself good at? Applicant, I don't know. Interviewer, okay. Why did you apply to the position? Applicant, they told me to. Interviewer, who told you to apply? Applicant, I don't know. One time an applicant told me that he was temporarily placed in charge of a team, and one of the team members spoke mostly French, so he told him to learn English or get the duck out of here, and then subsequently sent him home when he did not immediately learn English. The question was, tell me about a time that you worked well under loose supervision. My old boss told me that one of the applicants put Jesus Christ as a reference. He asked him, how would we contact your reference? Since the applicant didn't put any contact info for Jesus, and my old boss was curious on how he will answer. Apparently the applicant told him like this, and then he started praying. I forgot to ask him if he got the job or not since I couldn't stop laughing. A woman was about 15 years older than I was and clearly didn't understand that I was the one actually interviewing her for the job. This was an engineering position on my team making $175k. She was very candid with me regarding her overall personality and actually put her purse on her lap at one point and doing her makeup while we were talking. I guess she thought I was the secretary and she was making small talk before meeting with my boss. So this guy went through 5 60-minute interviews. DevOps role. I thought he was great and was ready to hire him. Just as a formally, I asked my boss to interview him. After 15 minutes she walks out and tell us to send him home. This is what he asked her. I'm not sexist, but I know a lot of other people think women aren't great engineers. So my question is, how is it that you go into such a higher level position? Was it luck? Why? Why would you ever ask that? Back when I was HR manager for a market research firm, one of the most awkward interviews was with my candidate and his mother. This 19-year-old who apparently had previous work experience in customer service brought his mother into the interview with him. I politely questioned his mother as to the reasoning of her joining in on the interview, and I was told, I'm just making sure this is the right company for him and making sure you're asking fair questions. I decided to roll with it. Why not? This is the most interesting thing I've had all week, so I asked my first question. She answered for him. I politely explained that the interviews I conducted with the candidate only unless special accommodations are required. I was told, I'm not going anywhere. I thanked them both for coming out and explained that the position requires problem solving and critical thinking on an individual level. Unless I am hiring the both of them under one salary working together as a full-time equivalent, this wouldn't work. I was then told I would be sued and to duck myself. I was sitting in on an interview and this kid comes in with an open Hawaiian shirt and khakis. This was for a state job. Mind you, when asked if he had any questions for us, he goes, yeah. Do you drug test? And when walking him out of the building, he's looking at the pictures of all the heads of that department and stops at the only woman on there and goes, when can I meet her? I want to know about her life. We immediately shredded his application. We had an applicant for a teaching position who stated on his resume that he held a Master of Music degree from Yale. When interviewing him, I asked what he thought of Woolsey Hall, Yale's primary concert hall, and its renowned pipe organ. By his answer and facial expression, I could tell he'd never been there. After he left, I called contacts at the university who confirmed that they'd never heard of him and no one by his name had received a degree there. I sat in 4-hour interviews at my college. We had an Eagle Scout come in and take us page by page through a scrapbook about his scout career, page by page. It was 10 or 20 pages of him explaining each and every one, taking a minute or two each time. We interrupted him to continue the interview, to which he got a little angry and said he was almost finished. He was able to add a page after the interview on how being an Eagle Scout doesn't guarantee you an RA job. I once interviewed a guy for a work-study position at a college radio station. The position was for 10 hours a week as a sports reporter. I told him that he would sometimes have to carry the equipment for the remote broadcast of sports, and he immediately took his shoe and sock off and put his foot on the table to show me a scar on his foot. Tells me that he has a plate in his foot and sometimes it hurts and he wouldn't be able to carry heavy things when it was hurting. TLDR. This dude put his bare foot on a table in a job interview. I was working as a front-end supervisor for a big box retailer going into the holiday season. This was the beginning of November. I get this girl who came in for an interview and I let her know it was seasonal work, but that we would be keeping some of the seasonal hires after January, and inquired as to whether she was looking for seasonal or long term. In the most stereotypical Valley Girl voice I've ever heard, she replied, "Well, I basically got in trouble for bad grades and staying out too late, and my parents are making me pay for my own car insurance this month." That was it. She just stared at me expecting her to hire her on the spot. I did not do that. I do still wonder if she ever got a job that helped her pay her car insurance for that month, though. In 2010, I conducted an interview with an applicant for a warehouse job. During the course of the interview, I mentioned my slight frustration about the grounded flights in Europe due to the volcano eruption in Iceland. Grounded flights meant we weren't receiving stock, and work was slow as a result. Applicant chimed in with, and I'm paraphrasing, "It's just another one of those things. He knows. He's mad." Who's mad? God. He's mad. Just like that big tsunami a few years ago. God's mad. And he's letting us know. We need to be more careful. More careful about what? Do you think? This whole gay acceptance thing. God's mad and he's letting us know. We need to abide by the good book or this kind of thing is just gonna keep happening. Then he failed the drug test. I've got tons of these. This one is my current favorite. I had a guy come in for a CDL and site work, truck driving and earth moving equipment position. After the initial pleasantries, he went on to inform me that he didn't like small talk. His pet peeve is people who socialize too much on the job when there is work to be done. He likes to get right to it and get hammering away on that work. He just doesn't understand these people who just talk instead of getting on with it. Not like him. He's not interested in chatting. No, he's got a better work ethic than these damn kids, and he's not going to stand around gabbing about nothing when time is wasting etc etc. He went on like that, no exaggeration, for an hour and 20 minutes. A solid hour and a half, including the initial question and answer bit at the beginning. I wasn't even mad. I just let him ramble on. At the end of it, he asked if he would be starting that day or if I needed to do some of this paperwork stuff for him. He hadn't even filled out his pre-hire information forms. Absolutely majestic. I had a guy show up who was a redhead and short. He had a beard. He wore a green suit. It was difficult to interview him with a straight face. He didn't get the job. Worst one I had was a guy that showed up and refused to answer any question. I don't know. That doesn't apply to me. So after 6 questions I asked, "Do you expect to get hired after this?" He said yes. Had a girl sit across from me, put her elbow on my desk, then rested her head flat on her hand so that her head was now sideways. She stayed that way through the entire interview. Another time I asked a guy if he had any special skills. He replied, "Keeping it real with y'all." I once had an interview at Home Hardware when I was younger. The boss asked me that stupid "where do you see yourself in 10 years" question, and my dumbass answers not working at Home Hardware when I'm 30. It wasn't a jab at him. I kinda rambled about having goals and that flew out at the end. So the 35-year-old didn't hire me after I insulted him to his face. Go figure. Now I try and be more present in the moment and less of a D. I sat in on interviews with a manager at the restaurant I worked at. I remember this application he pulled specifically cause the kid was from the same rough part of town the manager was. The manager comes in on a 5-minute rant on how much he hates scam artists trying to get money off decent people in the streets. Upon hearing this, the kid launched into a story about telling people he locked his keys in the car with his wallet and just needed $20 for pop a lock. Explains he could make $300 on a good day. The kicker? He doesn't have a car. He laughs while all of us stare at him dumbfounded. Manager kicked him out. He got a job down the street. I work at a real estate company that designs all of our marketing material in-house. As a result, When we were looking for a new assistant, having Illustrator Photoshop experience was a huge plus. We typically do phone interviews before we ask PPL in. One of the questions is whether they know their way around Ps. This guy answered yes, and I ask him for a more formal interview. Buddy comes in, well dressed, nicely mannered, on time. We go through the motions. When I ask him about what kind of experience he has with Ps, he flat out tells me my GF is really the one that does that. I'm not too familiar with that program. He didn't get the job. Don't open Reddit for 12 hours, a personal record. And this is my top comment. I'm not a boss, but my boss was actually just telling me about a woman she interviewed for my job about 6 months before I was hired. She came in for the interview in cut-off jean shorts and a nice top that was more appropriate for the club scene. Anyway, my boss decided early on in the interview that this woman wouldn't be hired. After all the initial, cliche questions, the woman would answer I'm not sure. They say their goodbyes. We'll let you know. Kind of crap, even though they didn't hire her. The following Monday though, she came in for work. They had to tell her she didn't have the job and they were still going over all the other applicants. She left but came back Tuesday and then Wednesday, and every day she came in for a week or two, thinking she had the job. My boss finally had to tell her if she came back, they would call the police on her. She finally got the hint, but damn, she really wanted to work, I guess. Why did you want to become a teacher? Guy cries and spends 10 minutes telling us all about how he was bullied at school. I applied for a job about 2 months ago, and during the initial phone screening I told the HR person that I had a Bachelor's of Science instead of a Bachelor's of Science. Still got the in-person interview but not the job. I was hiring an entry-level position. The woman showed up with a gold nose ring in, professional setting mind you, and a moo nightgown on. She then proceeds to tell me she doesn't have a driver's license while she scratched her breast. I asked a guy when would he be available to begin work if offered the position. His response was that he would have to put down his dogs in order to begin work as soon as possible, but was willing to do that to get the job. We called him almost immediately after the interview to tell him he wasn't selected and hopefully save his dogs' lives. I had to interview a guy for some contract labor, and when I showed him our work vehicle he shook my hand and said I'm sorry but I refuse to drive a Chevy and left. I was speechless. He was giving me the story of how hard he is having it. I decided to give him a shot, and because we had a Silverado for the work vehicle he turned it down. He has 3 young children. I was interviewing someone that had come to the US from the country I was born in. Throughout the interview she kept telling me how much better our country was and how much smarter and more educated she was than Americans. I politely thanked her for her time, told her we were looking for a different skill set and attitude, and suggested she might consider going back to the motherland as it seemed she would be much happier there. She told me it was obvious that I had become a dumb American and that I should go duck myself. It was funny. The country is Romania, since a few people asked. Due to some budget cuts, we were forced to replace all of our locally based contractors with contractors in India. Software dev. We fought like hell, but lost that battle. At least we won the battle to have a phone interview with all of the Indian replacements. Management would have been okay with letting the consulting firm dump whoever on us. During several of the interviews, we would ask a question, then there'd be a long pause, or even the sounds of typing. If they were too stupid to mute their phone, then they'd read off an answer that was almost too perfect. They were ducking googling the questions. I think we managed to find a couple guys who weren't terrible, but I don't know if all the vacant positions were ever filled. I started blasting out my resume and got hired elsewhere a month later. I wasn't going down with the sinking ship.